Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Tuesday, September 13th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, can two presidents share the same White House? We begin our show with new shocking details on Donald Trump's plans to keep a room in the White House even when Joe Biden moved in. Meanwhile, grand jury subpoenas were handed out to dozens of former Trump allies as the investigation into the January 6th insurrection, it picks up steam. We'll look into why the DOJ filed those subpoenas right before the midterms. Then, how much power does the president really have, and can he create more Black representation in his administration? The Black Americans who voted for him say yes, he can. We have the story.
Plus, one Emmy winner brought viewers to tears with her acceptance speech, and the hip-hop world mourns the life of a rising star shot and killed here in Los Angeles. We have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We start today with news on the Justice Department. The agency has subpoenaed more than 30 members of Donald Trump's political fundraising and former campaign team. The subpoenas come as the DOJ is ramping up its criminal investigation into the January 6th insurrection. Among those who got subpoenas are the former White House Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino and Trump's campaign manager Bill Stepien. Now, the move comes just days before the Justice Department begins its pre-election quiet period. Now, that's a 60-day window before a midterm election when the department seeks to avoid taking overt investigation action that could influence an election. And so looking into this, because I wanted to know what specific information the DOJ was trying to find out. So the subpoenas they sent out, they were like really broad. They covered so many things. One, they were looking into how much money was raised and spent in the attempt to overthrow the election in 2020. They also wanted to know about the efforts to submit those fake electors in the battleground states. And then they also handed out subpoenas to some of the people who helped organize the Stop the Steal rally. And so some of those went to, of course, some of the employees, the contractors. But what really got me is that they went to some of the poll workers and the low-level field workers, because those are the people that are going to talk. The people that were just kind of out there, maybe volunteering or just wanted to, they were Republican, but they were asked to do something maybe a little shady. And I don't see those people going down for Donald Trump. And so they handed out 30 to 40 of those subpoenas. And so we'll see what happens with that. But the DOJ is ramping up their investigation, and we should see what comes from that soon.
You hit the nail on the head, Mimi. I don't even have much to add here because you hit the nail on it so perfectly. Every single person who was subpoenaed. But what I thought was very interesting was that 60-day pre-election period, which we don't talk a lot about that. I've heard it before, but this story kind of ignited a fire, and I did just a deep dive a little bit more. I thought it was pretty interesting. The timing of these subpoenas were like, someone was like, hey, we're about to enter this period of 60 days where we cannot do anything, so we need to act right now. And I just want to give a kudos to whoever that person is, because it couldn't have been more better time. Because imagine getting into that election, that pre-election period where you cannot have any investigative reports that could tamper with the election. Imagine losing this opportunity right now, and then we can't do these subpoenas right now. So I just want to give a kudos to whoever thought like, hey, we need to act fast right now. We're running low on days.
Yeah, they have access to like so much. You can go see some of the people that were subpoenaed, like Bernard Kerik, a former New York City police commissioner. He was Brian Jack, the White House political director under Trump, was also subpoenaed. So we can drop some names in case you encounter a situation with these people down the road. Also, how about look at this as you have 30 subpoenas or maybe more eventually. Someone's, like you said, Mimi, someone is going to talk. And that's what we're trying to get to. We know at the end of the day who started this whole situation, from voter fraud to what happened to the insurrection. Now, let's get down to business and find out if we can get proof of where it all came from. And that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that, Romeo. And thank you for sharing some of those names. I am so interested, though, in the people that we don't know, because those are the people that don't necessarily have the names and the lawyers and everything to back back them up. So those are going to be the people that I think are going to probably get us somewhere in this investigation. Are probably going to give it up a little bit more. And we have to remember, this is just one case against Trump, right? Yeah. So the separate case is the DOJ looking into the mishandling of the classified documents they found at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, so this is just piling up. This is just more after more after more, which I don't understand how someone who has this much evidence against him can still say they're about to throw their ring in the hat for President of the United States.
Again, and just on to our next story here as well. Another shocking story about Donald Trump. He had no plans of leaving the White House even after Joe Biden was about to be inaugurated. A new book by New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman reveals that the former president told aides he was not leaving the White House because the election was stolen from him. Haberman's forthcoming book, Confidence: Man, the Making of Donald Trump, it says that the book, it adds in a source that told her that Trump said, quote, "Why would I leave the White House if they stole it from me?" As you know, the former president eventually gave up and left the White House the same day as Biden's administration. And so what I thought was very interesting here, just again reading into this, he literally thought in his mind that he was so gypped of an election that he was going to stand firm on not leaving the White House, which is so interesting. And we just talked about, him running again in possibly 2024. Why would people want to vote for someone who doesn't believe in a peaceful transfer of power? That is so important. The way that you carry yourself on the way out the door, just like you leave any job, right? You leave a job and say, to heck with it, I'm going to just leave today, tomorrow's my last day. That's not going to make you look good. But when you give your 2 weeks notice and you go through the proper steps to leave, it makes you look better, and it makes people want to potentially bring you back. Same way here. Why would a former president, a potentially another second-term president, why would people vote for someone who left in this way and doesn't believe in a peaceful transfer of power? That is so important. The way you leave is just as important as the way you enter back in.
Exactly.
I don't think that they were anticipating that there's nothing in the rule books. They had set nothing up for a president who's refusing to leave. So when all of this happened, I think everybody was like, what do we do? Do we call in the National Guards? How do we make a president leave the White House? What would that look like? And so he did eventually leave. And we just, if we let him back in, could you imagine the next time around, what that would look like? This is why we can't let that happen again.
You know, this says 2 things to me. One, the fact that people still want to vote for Donald Trump. Are they just that overwhelmed by him and that in love with this guy that Trump's to the T like that? Or is it just they don't have many choices when it comes to the Republican Party? So you can look at it either way. But I would say this. Here's a man that said over and over again, I'm not leaving. There's no way I lost. Almost like he was trying to convince himself that he actually won this election. We know there's no cheating. There was no fraud at all. Yet he still wanted to hold on and not let go. Almost like a little spoiled brat, right? So again, why we want someone like that back in the White House, knowing what we had to encounter the first time?
You know, to Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, he spoke on the anniversary of 9/11, and one thing that he kept saying was we have to protect our democracy. That's what Joe Biden kept saying. We have to continue to protect our democracy. And in this book, Maggie says that Donald Trump seemingly had no regard for democracy. And, literally night and day when we're talking about presidents.
And he was all for self, trust me. You know that. All right, former President Obama is back on the campaign trail. Mr. Obama spoke to a fundraiser Thursday for Senate Democrats in New York last week. Obama warned the crowd of the threats to democracy in America. His speech at the $50,000 plate dinner is part of Democrats gearing up for the midterm elections in November. CNN says the former president will campaign with Democrats either fighting to hold Senate seats or win them.
And the percentage of African-American senior aides in the Biden White House is not in line with the percentage of black people who voted for the president. That's according to the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. They're a think tank, and they're dedicated to studying African-Americans. They say 22% of Biden's voters were black in 2020, but the report says only 11% of the president's 139 most senior officials are black. Black White House employees, they usually make up lower-level assistant positions. And the report calls for the White House to make appointing changes to black officials and putting them in higher positions.
President Biden and First Lady Jill are the only U.S. government officials invited to Queen Elizabeth and Queen Elizabeth II's funeral. Sorry about that, soulmates. That means that the president will not be traveling with a large delegation as in normal with state funerals. The royal family has sent invitations only for heads of the state plus one guest. Multiple former former presidents often attend funerals for heads of state at the same time. The Queen's funeral, which is scheduled for Monday, will broadcast on television around the world.
This fall, Michigan voters will get a chance to decide if the state will expand voting opportunities for citizens. A question will appear on the November ballot on whether people should be allowed to vote by absentee ballots or do early voting. Michigan Supreme Court ruled last week that voters could decide if the state should expand voting access. Republicans in the state opposed absentee voting. They said it would cause voter fraud. They're using the same argument as Donald Trump election officials around the nation say mass voter fraud is a lie.
And Democrats think they have a chance of beating Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio. It will be a tough fight in a state that has been going red in the recent elections, but his U.S. Senate seat is being challenged by Congresswoman Val Dennings. A recent poll says she is running only 3 points behind Rubio. Meanwhile, former Republican turned Democrat Charlie Crist is trailing DeSantis by only 4 percentage points. Democrats say they hope to sway the Latino voters in this election season.
South Carolina's Democratic Party is demanding a black U.S. Senate candidate drop out of her race after audio recordings show her making disparaging comments about white voters in her state district. State Representative Crystal Matthews was caught on audio tape that was secretly recorded by Project Veritas, a conspirative group that uses shady tactics to go after Democratic politicians. On the tape, Matthews says that she represents a mostly white district, adding, quote, "I keep them right here like under my thumbs, otherwise they'll get out of control like kids." She has apologized for her comments, but says they were edited out of context. Matthews, who is running to replace Tim Scott as the state's U.S. Senator, has apologized for her comments. The representative says that she will not suspend or drop out of her race. Crystal Matthews, she's been very adamant about not dropping out of her race. I mean, also here, not to make this a white versus black situation here, but I mean, how many situations, how many white cops have we seen say the N-word, say awful things on audio recordings? This particular campaign, it was a shady tactic. Like the story said, they were, I don't know what context she said it in, but it's just kind of like, I mean, was it wrong? She apologized for it, yes. But, I mean, will this be the first time that we've heard something racially, unethical? No, it's not.
Yeah. So Project Veritas, they go around, they have hidden cameras, and they get people to say certain things, or they get you in a situation where they bait you, and then they record it, and then they release it, right? That's what they do. Again, we did the story about the senator who's running for election in Pennsylvania, where he killed he shot an unarmed black jogger. No one is calling for him to drop out of the race. She should absolutely stay in the race. Demi, you have really a great point. You know, we do stories every day where police officers are caught using the N-word. We know police officers that have killed people who are back on the job, if not at the same station, they move to another station, right? So why should she have to drop out of the race? By, whether it was tongue in cheek, as she says, or whatever happened, it was said. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's take it to even higher level. Let's just say Donald Trump. First of all, before he even got into office, how he disrespected former President Barack Obama, talking about his birth certificate. How about him talking about where he can grab women, disrespecting women in that nature? All the things that Trump said, instead of him saying he should not even have a chance to be in the White House, people still went out and voted for him. So look, she said what she said. It may have been a bad time on her. Maybe it's her fault. It may not allow her to win it, but she should not drop out of the race. If she's in it right now, she should stay in it until see what happens in the end.
And then, too, it was leaked audio footage. Not to say, I mean, because I wish that if we were a fly on the wall for so many people, come on, we would find out some really awful things about how people really feel about us. Yeah. So this being leaked audio as well with this campaign, this organization that this is what they seek to do. Also, this kind of doesn't stand anywhere because this was not an official message, official statement that she was saying. It was leaked audio, so I don't believe that it stands a leg anywhere, honestly.
Well, we'll see what happens.
We sure will.
All right, attorneys for the state of Minnesota are asking a judge to ignore Derek Chauvin's appeal for his conviction in the death of George Floyd. They say the appeal, which claims Chauvin as a cop could not be convicted of assault because of his duties as a police officer, does not hold legal merit. In their appeal, Chauvin's lawyers say his use of physical force during the arrest of Floyd is not illegal. State lawyers recently filed the brief in response to Chauvin's team's appeal that was filed in April.
And R. Kelly is a sexual predator who used his fame to abuse minors. That's what the Chicago prosecutor said during closing arguments in his child pornography trial yesterday. The 4-week trial is coming to an end. Prosecutors say Kelly and his co-defendants helped recover child pornography videos Kelly made of himself and hid the evidence before his 2008 trial, in which he was acquitted. Meanwhile, a Chicago judge has granted a motion that will allow $28,000 in the singer's prison commissary account to be given to a New York City court. That money will be used as restitution for the victims in R. Kelly's New York sex trafficking conviction. He was convicted to 30 years in prison earlier this year by a New York judge.
A Louisiana man who was in prison for 40 years for a rape that he did not commit wants to be compensated for the years that he spent locked up. Malcom Alexander took his argument to the state's appeals court last week. 62-year-old Alexander was released in 2018 after being convicted of rape in 1979. He was freed thanks to his lawyer successfully arguing that he had ineffective trial lawyers. Alexander's lawyers were able to show DNA collected at the rape scene that did not match the victim or Alexander. When he was freed, Alexander was not eligible for money from the state's Innocence Compensation Fund. The judge in Alexander's release hearing said that the evidence that resulted in his conviction being thrown out did not reach the level of proof needed to establish factual innocence.
The Gainesville, Florida Police Department's Internal Affairs Department says there were no violation of policy after a man was mauled by a police dog so severely he lost his eye. The Gainesville Police Department released a video of the incident. Terrell Bradley was arrested by Gainesville cops after he ran from a traffic stop back in July. Investigators say they discovered a gun and a bag of marijuana in the car. Police say they sent the K-9 after Bradley when he ran from them. Bradley was charged with possession of a stolen weapon and assaulting and fleeing police. The officers involved were put on paid administrative leave during the probe into the incident. Of course they were. Stories like this remind me of the civil rights movement. We saw those black and white footage videos of showing how people of color, especially black people, were treated in this particular situation. Yes, he ran from the police officer. This happens almost every day within our country, but for it to lead to being mauled by a police dog does not make any sense at all. It just shows the no respect that they have when it comes to people like us. It's going to continue to happen. What do we do about it? And at the end of the day, they're there, administrative leave. They're still getting their check. And here's a man that has only one eye because of this incident.
Yeah, the pictures, Mace, if you get a chance, Google Terrell Bradley. The picture of him is so heartbreaking. So we saw him in the beginning in the car. He looks absolutely nothing like that now. And for the officers to be, the investigation found that they did nothing wrong is I just have no words. I just can't even.
It makes me lost for words too, Mimi. The Gainesville Police Department is still saying that this was a standard practice. They're not making it seem as if this was something that was done wrong. But Romeo, back to your point, literally we've seen this over and over and over again. This was a traffic stop that turns violent. Like you said, Romeo, a black person gets scared, they start running, and then the police department also took about a week, I believe, to release the footage or even address, that this happened. And it's just a vicious cycle that happens in our community over and over again. And this is happening in 2022. This wasn't a story that happened a long time ago. No. And I just wonder what can be done nationwide, because we can fix this police department here, but then, like we said, another month or another week ago, we're going to see something like this happening again. When will this type of stuff happen?
And I don't want to hear, well, at least they didn't shoot him.
Yeah.
Not trying to hear that. We cannot have that as a reasoning tool, right?
Absolutely.
We can't.